Hello and welcome to the second edition of After 10. This week on the show, we'll take a closer look at the Democratic United Party candidate for president, Moon Jae-in. His plans to help out the middle class of South Korea, his plans to better relations with North Korea, and we'll ask, will he even be on the ballot come December 19th? And to answer those questions and others, we're joined by Shin Ji-yeon, Moon Jae-in's deputy spokesperson for the foreign press for the Moon Jae-in camp. Thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Oh, hello, Scott. Thanks for having me.
We, of course, do appreciate you being here. We were also wondering, though, and hoping maybe that Moon Jae-in would be coming in with you. I guess he's a bit busy these days, though.
He's in Gwangju now.
All right. Understandable. Maybe maybe next time. Let's get right to it, starting with the talk of the town these days, the possible merger between your candidate, Moon Jae-in, and the independent candidate in this race, Ahn Cheol-soo. The two men met earlier this week. They seem to have come to an agreement on merging their candidacies before the November 25th, 26th registration deadline. You're involved in this process. How is everything going right now, and how confident are you that these two men are going to be able to come to an agreement?
Since these two gentlemen are not motivated by their personal greed or personal ambition to become a president or to seize the power, they have this room for concessions. There may be some differences or discrepancies between their policies. They do realize that they have this same virtually identical philosophy, same goals, and same values shared by both of them. So that's a good starting point. And they met on Tuesday, and they made this agreement on 7 issues.
Right.
And actually, there was like working level officials named yesterday. So 3 people respectively from each camp. So they met together actually at 11 o'clock today.
Okay.
So they're going to draft a joint declaration for new politics.
Right. And I think what you're saying is the process is moving along.
Moving along,
but
yes.
The concern, of course, is that both of these men, they both want to be president, right? That's why they're on the ballot. So the question that everybody's asking, and I'm going to ask it anyway, even though I think I might know your answer, but how are they going to come to this agreement? How are they ultimately going to decide which of them stays on the ballot?
The specific method
right.
has not been discussed yet, and it's premature for me to expressly state on that issue. So once this joint declaration is agreed, and there will be another process for deciding this specific concrete method of how you're going to decide which candidate should be the single candidate.
So that will come with
That'll
time.
Come within the time. We have 16 days left.
16 days,
right.
November
25th, the clock is ticking.
The clock is ticking.
And November 25th or 26th is the registration deadline. So.
But Moon Jae-in would really, truly be willing to step aside if that's the way things played out.
I don't think that's appropriate. I mean, that's I don't think that's appropriate for me to answer that question. But anyway, just let's open the possibilities. There are tons of possibilities, and you don't know what's going to happen. But these two gentlemen will talk to each other in various minds. So, and they do have that. None of them should be blockade or barrier to prevent this current administration to seize the power. So they do share the principle.
They're on the same page, is what you're saying.
Yes,
and I think there's no question that Park Geun-hye is going to have a very easy road to the Blue House if they can't.
If the 3 are on the ballot.
Yeah, if they can't come to an agreement, they're going to split the liberal vote, and Park Geun-hye is going to have a very easy path to the presidency. Is there any chance that they don't come to an agreement? I mean, is there any chance that happens?
I don't think so.
They will come to an agreement.
They will.
All right.
Right.
Let's assume for a moment that Moon Jae-in's name is going to be on the ballot on December 19th, and let's also assume for a moment that he's elected president.
Yes.
He's going to have a lot of domestic issues to tackle. Your campaign slogan is people first.
Right.
The people of this country are struggling in a lot of ways with household debt and a number of other things.
Right.
What is Moon Jae-in's plan specifically to help out the middle class and those people in this country who are struggling right now?
Okay, so I guess that relates to economic democratization as well. And I want to elaborate on the campaign slogan, people first, put the people first. So Mr. Moon's perception is that, I mean, a human being comes first before anything else. Before your job title, before your education, your gender, your sexual orientation, your social background, and your family name, etc. It just goes on forever. So, say economic democratization is not an attempt to weaken or decrease or diminish the global competitiveness of whichever family-run conglomerates or big corporations, for that matter. It's an attempt. It's not an ultimate goal, actually, economic democracy itself. It is an instrument to accomplish or create a healthier economy. And now we witness that the income disparity between the rich and the poor is widening, and economic inequality is getting severe. So say, for instance, let's take an example of a hypermarket. This mega-sized hypermarket expanding nationwide all over in Korea. If there's no regulation on these massive hypermarkets, invasion so-called, then, I mean, it is obvious to everyone that the livelihood of middle-class, ordinary people, hard-working families, will be adversely affected and infringed. So these hard-working families do not ask the government to pay them like a free handout to pay the money. On the other hand, they are trying to live very hard to make a living, right? So if these mom-and-pop stores at your street corner in your neighborhood are just shut off because of this hypermarket, then they, virtually get rid of their livelihood. So their income disparity is going to be wider and wider. So that's why Mr. Moon believes that there must be some regulation to monitor and control family-run or these hypermarket chains. So
reforming from the top down,
yes.
And then in extension helping
right.
the middle class who are working in these smaller
smaller,
stores
medium-sized or companies, businesses.
The question, though, is, and this isn't just a criticism of Moon Jae-in's campaign, but also of Ahn Cheol-soo and Park Geun-hye, to be fair.
Everyone is talking about economic democratization.
Everybody's talking about
right.
it, and I think the Korean people are a bit frustrated because they don't feel like they're getting the details, the information that they need. That they say the candidates are very long on rhetoric, very short on specifics. So specifically, reforming the chaebol is something that all the candidates are talking about, but specifically putting the people first. How are the people going to see change under Moon Jae-in if he's president? Yeah.
So like I said earlier, if you have this, currently the hypermarket, if they want to open a new store in a certain region, they can just report, and that's it. Filing the report, and that's the only process they have to do. But if you want to change it to approval system, so that DFT or other governing authorities has discretion to decide that in this area hypermarket should not be opening, then the kind of approval system can positively affect the livelihood of the mom and pop stores.
So putting regulations on the distance between some of these hypermarkets
or some of the bakery store or those grocery shops, some kind of industrial sector.
That already.
Yes, already, right. and they are doing that in Europe as well. Right.
And you believe that would be effective in sort of helping people out in the long run. Moon Jae-in's also talked about other things like creating 1 million jobs and giving free child care for all, and immediate cuts in tuition fees, and people wonder, where is all this money going to be coming from? They also worry, are taxes going to go up? Is that a possibility?
Well, when you say tax increase, people are scared of tax increase.
Sure.
Right. So it's not going to be drastically done by French President Hollande, Louis Vuitton chairperson. He just flew from France to Swiss. But there has been significant tax cut on the side of the big corporations and on the wealthy people, 1% people, under the current Lee administration. So there should be some adjustment. I say that reinstatement of the original tax rate to be applied on those big corporations so that there will be some more funds to supply these kind of policies.
And that revenue would be enough to pay for these things that Moon Jae-in wants to do.
That's what he do.
Another thing Moon Jae-in wants to do is he has said he wants to renegotiate the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement,
yes.
right? What is wrong with the KORUS FTA as it stands right now? What's his objection to it?
He doesn't he's not trying to invalidate the whole FTA, of course, you know that, I guess.
Right.
There are some specific, certain provisions which can infringe upon the jurisdictional sovereignty, like, for instance, ISD, Investor-State Dispute Settlement Procedure. And there can, a lot of people, a lot of lawyers or jurists pinpoint that the kind of investor-state dispute settlement provision can adversely affect the Korean jurisdictional sovereignty because that is like strongly in favor of foreign investors at the sake of domestic investors. So that kind of provision can be revisited and renegotiated if necessary. And I want to point out that there is also a provision, express provision in FTA itself that if one party, either party has a strong problem, then those kind of specific provision can be renegotiated between the parties. So we're going to request renegotiation based on that clause.
And I would have to imagine the U.S. is going to push back a little bit if Moon Jae-in should do that. How is Moon Jae-in going to deal with the objections that the U.S. would have about renegotiating this free trade pact that is already in effect right now?
But the thing is, in 2007, the negotiation was completed, and under this re-administration, U.S. asked for renegotiation of some provisions, so that has been done. So again, this is our chance to request another opportunity to negotiate, rectify some unfair provisions if they find it necessary.
Okay. And in this same vein, Park Geun-hye has essentially accused Moon Jae-in of flip-flopping on a few issues, this KORUS FTA being one of them. She points out and says that Moon Jae-in, of course, a close aide to former President Roh Moo-hyun during his time in power. He was responsible at that time for kickstarting negotiations with the U.S. on this FTA. Also says, Park Geun-hye does, that Moon Jae-in was for this controversial naval base on Jeju Island before now sort of reversing course on it. Park Geun-hye is saying that Moon Jae-in is flip-flopping. How would you respond to that accusation?
Well, you know, he's the last person in the world to flip-flopping. He's a man of integrity. He's a man of his word. So when the situation evolves, you need to reflect on that change. You just cannot say the same things all over and over again, regardless of any change in the circumstances. And regarding FTA, he was the person who involved in commencement of the negotiation on KORUS FTA. But as I said earlier, there has been renegotiation, and some unfair provisions were newly inserted as per request by the U.S. So the FTA in Roh Moo-hyun administration and FTA now in Lee administration are different slightly.
Things have changed.
Things have changed. So there are two issues. So when there is a difference, and then you need to pinpoint and you need to indicate the difference. And also, when there is a change or shift in external circumstances, you need to also consider that change or shift in the totality of the circumstances. Otherwise, you are like
you're not adapting.
You are not adapting to the changes.
Okay. No. So Moon Jae-in is not flip-flopping. He's simply changing his stance based on the conditions around these certain issues.
Precisely.
We're veering a little bit into foreign policy, so let's completely change lanes and talk about foreign policy a little bit, starting with North Korea, of course. Moon Jae-in has said that he will reinstate the Sunshine Policy. instituted under President Kim Dae-jung back in 1998, followed through with President Roh Moo-hyun.
Right.
What's the case for bringing the Sunshine Policy back?
Okay. Before mentioning Sunshine Policy, I need to show you that how this the polling policy under Lee administration has caused a lot of problems, like
I assume you're not a fan of the hardline stance.
So, 46 people were killed, and under Roh Moo-hyun and Kim Dae-jung administration, there was no victim or no hostile confrontation like that. So this kind of inaction or non-response or hostility doesn't resolve any basic problems from North Korean side. So he needs to reflect that, and there is like engagement policy, Sunshine Policy, so-called. He's not gonna like totally copy Sunshine Policy because, as I said earlier, there is some change in the circumstances, and North Korea has a new leader, and other countries, China is becoming a G2 nation, and it has certain stronger influence on North Korea. And all these circumstances must be incorporated and reflected to make a foreign policy decision. So Mr. Moon is going to adopt some of the relevant components of the Sunshine Policy, like
which are what?
6-party talks, like multilateral policy. So rather than bilateral talks between North Korea and South Korea, he believes that 6-party talks involving U.S. and China are more beneficial and more helpful and more efficient to resolve North Korean issues. That's what he believes. So that kind of component can be introduced and adapted by himself, but it's not like he's copying Sunshine Policy and reinstate everything.
So sort of a Sunshine Policy 2.0, a new version.
2.0, a new version, Moon Jae-in version.
Right. The criticisms of the Sunshine Policy 1.0 were pretty loud, that this aid was given to the North without any sort of preconditions, that it went to the military, it went to the elite, the human rights situation wasn't addressed. Basically, you know, they got all of this help without any questions being asked. Is that going to be changed under Moon Jae-in?
Yes, I think there is going to be some change. I mean, it's not created. So there should be some negotiation discussion that something like no nuclear weapons in North Korea. That's so clear to Mr. Moon. And U.S. shares the same philosophy. No nuclear weapon shall be allowed in North Korea. Maybe for civilized purposes, they can be negotiated, but not for military purposes. So, and the difference between Kim Dae-jung administration, Sunshine Policy, and even Roh Moo-hyun administration as well, to Mr. Moon, peace is the economy. So everything shall be approached from economic perspective. So when North Korea is deemed a land of opportunity, which has cheap labor, relatively affordable labor force, and other natural scarce resources, things like that. So Mr. Moon believes that if you open up North Korea, then that's going to be a great, huge economic opportunity for both of us, both of North Korea and South Korea. So everything shall be approached from economic, practical perspective.
Using that as a starting point, and then moving on to addressing the other issues. You also, just briefly, you mentioned the Yeonpyeong attack and the Cheonan attacks back in 2010. Is that something that Moon Jae-in would ask the North Korean regime to account for? A lot of South Koreans want at least an acknowledgement that you know, an apology of some sort.
That's the Myung-Moon administration's approach. And if you just keep raising this as precondition to do something, it's not going to resolve any substantial issues. And that's been approved and that's been witnessed in this administration.
Okay. So Moon Jae-in would sit down with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un without any sort of preconditions. I know he's talked about June 15th of next year as a possible date for a meeting. No preconditions.
That's a meeting. That's just for a meeting. So in that meeting, in particular, I don't think there is going to be any precondition. But after that, there may be other factors to be considered.
So maybe they'll set the preconditions at that particular time for the policy to come.
As the situation evolves, yes.
Okay. We're a little over a month now away from Election Day. It's hard to overlook the fact that We've talked about former President Roh Moo-hyun a few times over the course of this interview. Moon Jae-in, of course, a close friend, a close aide of the former president, and sort of viewed, still to this day, as sort of being, I'm not sure what the proper term would be, sidekick or a second in command. Now Moon Jae-in wants to be the leader. He wants to be the first in command.
Yes.
Has this been difficult for your campaign to sort of get out of the shadow of former President Roh Moo-hyun, or is this something that Moon Jae-in and the campaign embrace? How have you addressed that?
We admit that they were close friends, lifelong. They shared this lifelong history. But Roh Moo-hyun was Roh Moo-hyun, and Moon Jae-in is Moon Jae-in. And back then, like 10 years ago, and it's now 2012. So there is time difference of 10 years. And although they share similar ideas or philosophies, these two gentlemen have totally different personal characters. So if you see Moon Jae-in, he is very calm, and he rarely makes mistake because he's not like rushed, or he's a very thoughtful and considerate person. So there's a personality difference. And he also is not antagonistic or opposed to the people who have different perspectives from him. That means he can communicate with foes and friends alike. He can communicate with any person who strongly disagrees with him. So that's a great attribute that Mr. Roh maybe didn't have, but Mr. Moon has now.
So what I hear you saying is that two separate individuals should be judged completely separate.
Separate standards.
Moon Jae-in should be judged based on who he is and what he wants to do.
Yes.
That is something that Kim Sung-ju, who was here last week, she's one of the co-chairs of Park and He's campaign, would perhaps disagree with you about. She tried to tie in Moon Jae-in with some of the corruption scandals that occurred during President Roh's administration, basically saying that Moon Jae-in should take responsibility for what happened. How would you respond
that's
to that?
Completely onto allegations. That has no substantial evidence to prove the kind of allegation. I don't think they shouldn't have made those kind of allegations. I mean, he is so famous for the fact that he is a man of integrity. I mean, a lot of actually, the investigation involving President Roh's tragic death, there was no wrongdoing on the part of Mr. Moon. He was the person who had no problem in investigation of all these political scandal and other problems.
Right. There was no proof that he was involved.
No, there is no problem. I don't think he's the kind of person. He's totally just straightforward and honest and man of integrity, I should say, again and over and again.
All right. Well, we appreciate that, and we'll certainly be watching over the next couple of weeks to find out how the talks between Ahn Cheol-soo and Moon Jae-in go, and then also in the weeks to come after that, with the election coming up very quickly.
Yes.
Shin-ji-yeon, we thank you so very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
My pleasure.
And that does it for this edition of After 10. Next week on the show, we'll be speaking with a representative from Ahn Cheol-soo's camp. You can follow us on Twitter and drop us a line there, or check out our message board if you want to leave a message. Take care, and we'll see you next week after 10.
A place to retain the mysterious history of 5,000 years. This is Gyeongbuk. Splendid nature. Traditional culture. Diversified joy. The future as the city of traditional culture and high-tech science. The pride of Korea, Gyeongbuk.